Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gents. This is DafubFilm&TV, and I have just watched episode 3 of Ahsoka. So, without further ado, here's my review. First off the bat, the moment I went to play the episode and look at it, my heart kind of immediately sank. And it immediately sank because the first thing I saw was the runtime. Exactly an astounding, a shocking 34 minutes and 40 something seconds in total. And that includes, of course, the credits at the end of the episode. This has become something of a thing with... I'm not sure if there are any kind of... I think, yeah, there are a couple of kind of, I think, 30-minute plus to episodes, 30-minute and a bit episodes, I think, in Secret Invasion, if memory serves me correctly. And there are certainly a number of them in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and also a number of quite short episodes in Season 1 and Season 2 of that show. And, you know, it comes across as, you know, Disney cutting corners. In other words, they need a certain number of episodes to keep, you know, people paying attention and subscribe to Disneyplus for a certain number of weeks before their next streaming show, whether it be an MCU show or a Star Wars show, becomes available. And the core underlying problem is that they just don't seem to be, for this, you know, ginormous multi-billion dollar company, whose revenue I think is in the tens of billions of dollars every year, they just don't seem to be willing to spend the money to do it properly. And so what you end up seeing this kind of hugely variable episode length from one episode to the next. So the first episode of Ahsoka is, I think, 50 minutes and a bit long. The second episode is 40 minutes and a bit long. And now this one is like 34 minutes long. So there's this huge variability in episode length that you just do not see, certainly not that I'm aware of, in any other form of television or streaming show out there. And you don't see broadcast television shows, whether they have you know, kind of a long episode run per season, like in American broadcast television shows, where they might go 20, 22 episodes a season, or a shorter episode run like you might find in Europe, or in some cases, in the case of certain shows also on broadcast or cable television in the US as well, where there might be only kind of streaming show length per season, 8 to 12 episodes a season. The one thing those shows, you know, have in common is the episode length tends to be comparatively uniform. Yeah, you might get a season final that's longer, and there might be a bit of variability from episode to episode in terms of running time of like a few minutes. And again, some episodes might be, you know, 10, 20, 30 minutes longer if there are more, if they're season final, or if just the story, you know, requires it. But you do not see what you're seeing here from Disneyplus, where you get episodes like, there was an episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian that was over 50 minutes long, and then you have multiple 40-minute at best episodes, and like I think at least 2 or 3 30-minute long or 30-minute and a bit long episodes of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, there's at least a couple of very short episodes of Secret Invasion as well. And it's just, there seems to be this you know, there's no logical reason that I can think of it, other than they don't want to spend the money to make, I think in this case, Ahsoka is 8 episodes long. They don't want to spend the money making a show where the average episode runtime is somewhere between, say, 45 and 55 minutes long. And so you get one longish episode at the beginning is 50 minutes long. Then you get a 40 minutes and a bit episode. And then you get this really kind of short 30 minutes and a bit episode. And that's 30 minutes including kind of the title screen at the beginning of the episode and the credits at the end of it. That is more akin to what you'd expect for a runtime of an episode like a cartoon show on television, where it's, you know, it's 34 or 35 minutes long, including ads. And it makes absolutely and utterly no sense. They're trying to compete with Netflix. They're trying to compete with premium cable, which in the US, and satellite television, which in the US means HBO. They're trying to compete with the other streaming services, which are coming along at a kind of a steady pace. And they're just like, there is again no justification for this. This cannot have been a case of like, oh, we just can't put together a 50-minute episode for this episode. It's going to have to be only 30 minutes long because we just can't write a 50-minute episode. Of course they can write a 50-minute episode. Of course they can write a 45-minute episode. And my concern now, my very significant concern now, is that this is what, like, it's going to be like Mandalorian season 3 all over again, where we've been promised 8 episodes of a kind of premium appointment television Star Wars show starring Ahsoka, who's probably the single most popular female character in all of Star Wars, maybe, even more so than, say, Princess Leia at this point. And rather than getting, again, 45 to 55 minute episodes, 8 45 to 55 minute episodes, where there's plenty of time to tell the story, to dwell in a particular relevant conversation, say between Ahsoka and her Padawan, where they discuss, their past, discuss their relationship, where you get to draw out and understand the characters both through the writing and through the acting of the actors. Instead, you have highly compressed storytelling because the episodes, or you get, episodes are very variable in length, and so some of them again are very, very short. Again, in my view, unnecessarily so, to the point where it damages the show, it damages the storytelling. And this is like, I'm like, you're spending huge amounts of money, you're competing in what is a new part of kind of the media / mass market entertainment industry, which is premium subscription television streaming. And you're within literally 3 episodes, we're down to 34 minutes. And the question becomes, well, how many more episodes are going to be like this? We're 3 episodes in. There's 8 episodes in the season. So that's what, my math is always terrible. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, there's 8. There's 8 episodes in total. 3 from 8 is 5. Yeah. Again, my math is terrible. I apologize. Are we going to get like 2 more 30-minute, barely 30-minute episodes or less than 30-minute episodes when you take into account the credits at the end? And then maybe, if we're lucky, 2 more kind of 40-minute plus episodes. And maybe, if we're really lucky, a 50-minute, final episode. Is that what it's going to be? Is it going to be a case of, again, where Disney won't take the time to write the show properly, won't spend the money to make a show that runs, 8, 12 episodes a season, where the episodes are on average high 40s to low 50 minutes long in runtime? And so we're just getting unnecessarily kind of short episodes, unnecessarily truncated storytelling. And so far, it hasn't fallen into the trap that particularly kind of, well, every season of The Mandalorian has fallen into, which is that there are unnecessary filler episodes that, in my view, don't need to be there, which kind of, again, interrupt that. They're highly kind of episodic, kind of standalone. They interrupt the flow of the show. And the flow of the story. They interrupt the whole kind of cohesiveness of the story they're trying to tell, and that's certainly been a problem with the Mandalorian. And it's kind of, one could say that it is what's the best term to describe it as? That it's a kind of an obsolete vestigial organ that the live-action streaming Star Wars shows have inherited from the animated series like Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and now also the Bad Batch, that have, again, unnecessary filler episodes that don't need to be there, or that could be, that budget time could have been spent making an episode that was much more relevant to kind of the main story threads running through the season and running through the show. And that hasn't happened here yet, and God forbid it does. But if we get some kind of 40-minute unnecessary distraction next week or at some point over the next couple of weeks, it's just like I don't understand what they're doing at all. Like there's no legitimate budgetary reason for why, when you're trying to compete in this ultra high-end premium space, real mass market, where you're trying to sell subscriptions to people not just in the US, but in literally the entirety of the industrialized first world, plus Asia, Western first world, and then plus Asia, both first world Asia and developing Asia, and so on, and other parts of the rest of kind of emerging markets in the rest of the world. It's a cutthroat environment. Netflix is sitting on huge amounts of cash. Paramount Plus is a thing. HBO Max, now Max, is a thing. Hulu is a thing. Although I think Disney owns a significant and not a majority stakeholding in Hulu at this point. But either way, there should be there should be an awful lot more resources, and like, they shouldn't be cutting corners like this. They shouldn't be cutting corners at all. And it's either corner cutting or, and I think option one or option two, genuinely incompetent writing. And so far, I mean, again, the positive to this, again, it's not much of a compliment considering how much of a train wreck most of the last couple of Star Wars shows have been. It's still much better put together than Obi-Wan Kenobi, much better made than Obi-Wan Kenobi. The story is much better put together, much more cohesive than it was in episode 3 of Mandalorian, which was a disorganized mess. The same is true of the Book of Boba Fett. And the production values are very good, and a lot goes on in this episode. You get to see, again, spoiler warning for anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled, you get to see Mon Mothma, you get to see other members of the kind of New Republic council / Senate, or council within the Senate. You get to see, there's lots of kind of action-y sequences, like space battles, fighters chasing, after Ahsoka and her Padawan, whose name I forget, and is the live-action version of a Star Wars Rebels character, who's Sabine Wren, I think it is. Yes, that's it. From the animated show. But again, and it looks very good. But the same is true of the space battles from season 3 of The Mandalorian, and it was still a mess. Do you know what I mean? It was still a mess, and I would consider kind of season 1 and season 2 of The Mandalorian to be at best kind of mid, and in both cases they were kind of saved by their season finals. Season 1 by the revelation of Baby Yoda, aka Grogu, and season 2 by again, spoiler warning, Luke Skywalker turning up to save the day. Although again, I thought that was too member-berry-ish, too playing to the old school fan base, and I found it a bit annoying. But a lot of people were kind of, made quite happy by that. Although again, because of The Last Jedi, it's kind of, that whole thing, kind of characters kind of severely, if not ruined, then severely besmirched from my standpoint. So Luke is in need of quite a bit of rehabilitation work. Whether they'll ever get around to that, I don't know. So, it is, it's there's lots goes on in the relatively limited runtime, but again, the writing, the dialogue, with such such a large amount of kind of action going on, and so much stuff going on in such a relatively short runtime, you're not getting anywhere near the kind of interaction between particularly Ahsoka and Sabine Wren, who've clearly, since the end of Star Wars Rebels, have certainly built up some baggage. That's being, explored to a very kind of basic piecemeal level over the last, 2 episodes. It's not, it's, they're not, it's just, it comes across, when you have the short run times, when the writing is the way it is, when you've got, people being killed with lightsabers where they're not, no limbs are being chopped off. There's no, like, lightsabers are, as like I've noticed as people have been criticizing it online, they kind of, that Disney can't or won't do lightsabers properly because they're against particularly living targets. They're simply just too kind of brutal slash lethal. If you have in like the first episode of this show, you've got two force wielding kind of, at least one ex Jedi and his Padawan slash apprentice, cutting through a New Republic ship crew like a hot knife through butter with lightsabers. And there's no, like, the great advantage of lightsabers is there's no real gore, because as they cut through living flesh, they also cauterize. So there's no blood all over the place and stuff like that. So it's not gory. But they even won't, they just like, they've tamed things down, Disney has, to too great a degree. It lacks the kind of bite that, even the kind of the prequel trilogy movies, let alone the original ones, had. Rosario Dawson continues to be like a great example of fantastic casting. She's perfect for the role. And I think some people have been complaining, oh, she's different from the animated series Ahsoka. And the answer to that is really very simple. The Ahsoka from kind of the late Clone Wars slash Fall of the Jedi, and what you see of her in, and certainly at that point, and from the Clone Wars cartoon show, she's in her, by the end of the Clone Wars, she's in like her late 20s, maybe 20 years old maximum. By the time you see her in this show, it's after the Empire has collapsed. The Empire lasted, over 20 years. So she's now kind of well into her 30s at the youngest, and possibly a good chunk into her 40s by this stage. And being through what she's been through, what she saw during the Fall of the Jedi, what she's witnessed to the Jedi being wiped out by the Empire during the Empire's existence, constantly being hunted, constantly hiding, and so on, it'd be perfectly reasonable for that, combined with age and time and life experience, for her to, change as a person slash character. So I'm perfectly fine with Rosario Dawson's portrayal of the character. Now, the writing, again, I'll still give it a bit more time, but it's a bit hard to properly evaluate the writing in a per episode basis when this episode is, again, when you take into account the end credits, it's at best 30 minutes long, maybe 25 to 28 minutes long, something like that, at best, in terms of the actual runtime of the episode. And it's just, frankly, it's just too short. And the fact that this has become, certainly with the Star Wars shows, and I think to agree also with the MCU shows, a modus operandi for Disney where they have multiple episodes that are by live action television standards, whether they be broadcast television, cable television, premium cable, premium subscription streaming services standards, are very, 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 very short. Again, there was at least 2 of them in season 3 of The Mandalorian. I think there were 1 or 2 of them in Secret Invasion, and so on. It comes across as, we need a certain number of episodes to keep eyes on screens for a certain number of weeks to maintain our subscriber base. But we don't want to spend the money to have, 8 to 12 episodes of 45 to 55 minute long episodes of television slash streaming show. So we're just gonna, nickel and dime our audience the way we do in our parks, in our theme parks, and have a, one or, maybe multiple episodes that, in terms, when you take into account the time taken up by the credits, are barely half an hour or less long. And as far as I'm concerned, that's totally unacceptable, and quite frankly, somewhat frustrating. You're trying to, sit down, watch what's supposed to be appointment television, and you're literally getting about the same amount of actual runtime as you would get from a broadcast, from a Clone Wars animated episode of the Clone Wars cartoon show, where you maybe got 25 minutes, 28 minutes max of actual show, and then another 10 minutes of advertising time. And it is, to my mind, completely and utterly unacceptable. It's annoying. It's frustrating. I think there people seem to be turning on Dave Filoni, who I think wrote every episode of this show, and he's been, there've been some people out there said, "Oh, Filoni will save us, Filoni will save us," because he was kind of, an acolyte of George Lucas, trained up by George Lucas. But there seems to be, kind of at least a part of the Star Wars fan base out there are, quote unquote, turning on him. I don't know. Again, I'll wait for the run of the season to pass judgment to give any indication as to whether Filoni is, as a writer, good enough to make the transition from kind of cartoon shows aimed principally, but maybe not exclusively, at kids, maybe older kids, but kids nonetheless, to stuff aimed more at kind of teenagers / and to it for an all ages audience, which is what the original movies were. It's what the prequel trilogy was. And what it was supposed to be, what the sequel trilogy was supposed to be as well. But we're not. Again, in this case, so far the indications are is that he doesn't seem to be able to make that transition. Maybe, again, it's because of creative restraints imposed upon him by Disney via Lucasfilm. And maybe it's also down to budget constraints in terms of total amount of minutes on screen he has with all the episodes combined, which means he has to have some unnecessarily short episodes. But again, I'm kind of ranting and raving at this point. I probably could have done this review in at least 5 or 6 minutes less, maybe in 10 minutes less than its current runtime. But that's just my kind of stream of consciousness view on this. The production quality is great. The special effects, the CGI work in the space sequences is great, as it was in season 3 of The Mandalorian. And quite frankly, it didn't matter there, and it doesn't matter here. The storytelling is being hamstrung in this case by an unnecessarily short episode. It feels frustrating. The lightsabers have been, again, as usual per Disney Star Wars, have been kind of, what's the word? Muzzled. That's the term to use, because again, you can't have you can't even have, like, force using lightsaber wielders, decapitating people or chopping off their limbs off screen, let alone on. So you can't even imply it, which is, ridiculous. Anyway, that is my perspective on things. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Please like the video if you, for some strange reason, you haven't already liked it. And if you, again, for a really strange reason, haven't already subscribed to this channel, please do so. And ring the bell for notifications for when I upload more of my scintillating, unstructured ramblings the next time I do so. This is DafubFilm&TV. Not impressed, and things are beginning to bode ill. I was hoping this was going to be a return to form. It is so far for the shows, compared to the very poor quality of what we've of the last 3 Star Wars shows in one way or another. But apart from that, again, as I've said, it's not, if this is an indicator of how things are going, if it's going to be just a better, made version of, say, season 1 or season 2 of The Mandalorian, that's not going to be enough to help to restore and repair the IP, which has been hugely damaged under Disney's ownership. So this is DafubFilm&TV. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Signing off. Toodaloo.